Welcome back to another episode of Bossy, Brilliant, and Badass. I'm Lisa Lindsay here with my visible co-host, Liz Green. I just cracked myself up because I'm like, yeah, visible, because we are talking about visibility, but visible,
right.
but because I can actually see you.
Because we're both wearing our glasses at the top of the show and take them off during the show.
I know. I just like, well, I can actually see her, so she's visible. That's so funny. Oh my God, I don't know what's going on with me today.
Well, I mean, we've been recording a bunch of these kind of back to back, but I'm really excited. I know I say this often about our guests, but honestly, with Allie, I learned so much about PR and what it is and what you can do really on a budget or even free, which is excellent.
Right. Yeah. Just kind of really creating that visibility for yourself and sort of pitching and making yourself known and getting out there if that's something that you want to do for yourself, and recognizing that PR is just one element of the entire pie. And we talked about this a little bit with our guest earlier this year, where we talked about how PR is just one part of the big pie that we need to do. But Allie sort of kind of came in and like broke it down and really helped us to hone in about getting the actual visibility that we may want for our businesses, and doing that more so in a traditional way versus social media, which is where people think that we should be getting that.
Well, that's just it exactly, right? Like most of us just think, okay, well, it's just all about social media. And it is, but it's also not. There's so much more. And that's what she goes into. And she really kind of breaks it down into bite-sized pieces and tips that are really doable and very user-friendly.
Yeah, which we always love that around here. We always love that around here. So, all right. So we're going to go ahead and introduce Allie. Her name is Allie Martin, and she is a visibility expert. And really, she spends her time, and she's on a mission to support female entrepreneurs by integrating new and traditional marketing tactics so that we can grow our visibility. So let's go ahead and welcome Allie to the show. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa and Liz. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how to be your own publicist, because a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we're solo, we're working in our businesses by ourselves. And I think this is just a great way for us to talk about how we can do some of these fundamental things ourselves to make sure that we get ourselves better known. But before we dive into that, why don't you share with us just a little bit about your background and how you came to do this work?
Yes, I am Allie Martin. I am based in Kentucky. I am a visibility expert working with female entrepreneurs, increasing their visibility through strategic social media and proactive public relations. So that's the part we're going to talk about today, but I have the credibility to be able to talk about that because I came from the world of public relations, where I served as Amazon's North American PR director for their Southeast region of the United States, and have worked with other brands like Kendra Scott, International Spa Association, and now own my own agency called Fame and Fortune.
Ooh, love that name.
Love the name. Fame and Fortune.
I feel like it's aspirational a little bit, right? Like aspirational a little bit, and then Fame and Fortune, what we all want.
Making it happen.
Yeah, and it's great. It's excellent because, so many of us as entrepreneurs, we think, oh my gosh, I would love to hire a PR person. I need a PR person. How am I going to get my business out there without one? Can't afford it, but I have no idea where to start.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point because a lot of people actually miss PR as a part of their marketing strategy. A lot of them immediately go to the social media side or they go to their website, and a lot of people aren't thinking about PR. But if you are, that's a really good point. But really, whenever I think about visibility and getting your name out there, it is the fastest way to gain credibility and authority in your industry. And that's because you're presenting yourself as a trusted and reputable source through media's lens. And I teach a method of getting PR that's free. So I don't really believe in the paid opportunities that are out there. So really focusing on the free. I've actually heard that comment so many times of people being like, I didn't realize PR could be free, like totally free. And it's like, yes, you can totally do this on a $0 budget. So I do think it is something that it's really good that we're talking about it, because it's a powerful tool that can be done on a budget.
Fantastic. So
Great.
let's get into it a little bit, right? And before we do that, let's kind of level set a little bit, make sure we all understand what we're talking about here when we're talking about PR and visibility.
Yeah, so it's truly the act of getting your name through the media. So that can look like a couple of different ways. So sometimes that's a feature in a print publication, a magazine, your local newspaper. You can get an interview on TV, and so that can start at a local level and being a local TV show. Can go all the way up to a national level, like the Today Show or Good Morning America. And then we have podcasts that have now entered the scene in the last decade. And those are very powerful tools because your audience is getting to hear your voice. They're getting to learn to trust you. So really, any way that you're using the media to present yourself as that authority figure is public relations.
Great.
Excellent. Right. And I think that that's such a great way of like expanding it so it's more modern, because I think we think PR and the first thing that kind of comes to mind is, like the press secretary for the president, right? Or something like that. But it's so much bigger and wider than that.
Yeah. And, it really can span the gamut as far as just visibility in general. So a lot of people will lump it into the idea of even being visible on social media. I actually had somebody ask me today, like, how do I get a feature? And I said, there's really two methods. You can either pitch a journalist, or you can look for opportunities through free websites, free resources, which I'll be happy to share. And then it really dawned on me that there's now really a third option, and that's by going viral on a social media platform and a journalist seeing that and picking it up. So that's kind of actually like switching my mind just as of today as maybe a third way to get your message out there. But I think we all know that's a little bit harder to do. The first two options are totally doable. So we'll stick with those. But yeah, that's really the main avenues that you can really start to achieve this PR.
Fantastic. So let's, all right. So then let's truly get into it. Here I am, a brand new person, or even like an established business, right? And I really want to raise awareness, be more visible in my industry or whatever, more people to know me so that they could ultimately buy from me. What do I do? Where do I start? What should I be thinking about?
So I have 7. Yeah, no,
I was going to say that's 3 questions, but that's all right.
Nope, that's perfect. I'm here to answer it. So I have 7 steps that will really walk you through that process. The very first one is really this idea of pitching yourself to journalists that would want to cover your story. But the first thing you have to keep in mind when you're doing that pitch, you're writing that pitch to a journalist, is you have to be authentic and true and tell your unique story. So I've run into situations before where people want to maybe embellish a story a little bit or create this false narrative, and that will quickly come out. Like that will quickly be found. So you have to just start from the basis that you're going to be true and honest, but know that your story is needed. So there's no fear in having a unique angle. And people will be like, oh, well, why do people care about my story? Why do they need to hear it? You will be surprised. So that would be my first step, is just kind of have that mindset that you need to be authentic and true. The second thing to remember is that
before we go into the second one, I'm just curious. I'm hoping we're still on what you were going to say next is the first thing, but I'm just curious. I'm pitching. If I'm pitching, what am I pitching? What am I telling them? I mean, is that what you,
right? That's exactly what I'm going to get into.
Perfect.
But really, it is this idea of sending an email to a producer or a reporter at a TV station, a podcast, or a newspaper or a publication. It is really just this idea of presenting a story idea to those journalists. But whenever you're writing a pitch, you have to remember that it's not about you. So I think a lot of people get wrapped up in, oh, I'm so great. Here's my story. This is all that I can offer. But whenever a journalist is looking at a pitch, they're not just looking at that pitch as, oh, I want to tell Allie's story. It's so great. They're looking at it from the perspective of, who are my listeners? Who are my readers? Who are my viewers? What do they care about? What do they want in their media? So, the goal of all of these outlets is to increase subscribers, increase viewers, keep them longer with them. So what are those stories that can do that? So remembering that it's not all about you when you're writing this pitch is really going to be important. The third thing is something that's timely and relevant. So what I mean by that is, if there is a conversation happening in the news currently that you can weigh in on, that you have an expert point of view that you can offer to the story, that's perfect. A lot of times when we focus on local media, they want to take national stories and give a local perspective to it. So something that I have found that works really well for me is I will reach out to my local TV stations on particularly national, international holidays, and I will say, I'm the perfect fit for this. Can we do a story about it? So for instance, International Women's Day happened, and I reached out to my local TV station. I said, I'm a female business owner. I work with females. I empower them to tell their story. And I would love to talk about that on International Women's Day. They had me on to talk about that from a perspective. So even when you're looking at international and national news, you can still bring it down to a local perspective. So that keeping that timely and relevancy in mind whenever you're pitching the outlet. The fourth thing to keep in mind is to sell the idea. So a way you can do this is you can give a statistic in your pitch. So a statistic would, be pulling in some research that really supports the opinion you have, or maybe a reason why they need to be talking about it. For instance, I worked with an author who wrote a book about her addiction to Adderall. And at the time, it wasn't something that was talked about at all. And she was able to give stats to me that I was then able to use in pitches that really supported the reason why we needed to be talking about Adderall addiction, because it's running rampant in college students today. And that really opens the eye to the producer or the journalist that's reading that pitch to go, oh, my goodness, yes, we do need to be talking about this. This is something we have to talk about today, right now. The fifth of the 7 step is to map out the segment. So in this case, I'm thinking about a TV segment, and journalists are underpaid, overworked, understaffed. They have a million things on their plate. Anytime we can make it easier for them and actually map out exactly what this segment would look like, it is so easy for them to write back to your email, yes, let's do it. Rather than kind of sit there and go, well, we could make this work if we were able to pull in a doctor. But so whenever you are thinking about the story you want to tell to the media, are there supporting figures that you can bring into that story? Are there questions you can write out that you could say, the reporter that's doing the story could ask me this, 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 and this? I'm mentioning again that Adderall addiction story. We were able to pull in a doctor that was able to give his opinion on Adderall addiction and why it's happening. And that just gave us, again, more credibility, and it made it easy for the TV show to say, yes, we want her on to talk about her side of the story, and we want the doctor to come on to give us that perspective. And so it was just super easy for them to give us that go ahead, check mark, green light it, and we ran with it. The 6th and the 7th step really kind of go together, but it's having an opinion and taking a stand. So having an opinion on a topic is not a bad thing. And it actually can really help you when you're pitching to the media to stand out. And sometimes this works if you have a conflicting opinion with what most people are going with, that, you know, that kind of everybody's mentality is they're over on this side, and you feel like you're just the lone bird over on the other side saying, well, this is kind of how I feel about it. And so if you can have that, it brings a little more drama into the situation, and it makes it a little bit more appealing to the journalist reading it. So all of these things together can work to really catch the journalist's attention and catch their eye. As I mentioned, they are understaffed. So they are reading through 300, 400 pitches every single day. So whatever you can do to make it stand out, make it easy for them to say yes, so that they have you come on the show, you get the feature you're looking for, they get the value for their audience they're looking for, and it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, you know, that's great. And okay, so when we think about pitching a journalist, right? And we think about wanting to stand out, what are some other things we can do to stand out? Because as you say, they get 300-400 pitches a day. They're probably not going through all of them, right? I get it, to make it easy for them once they do, but how can I position myself so that they'll open my email?
So when you think about that, the two things they see when your email comes into their inbox is the name of who it came from and the headline that is on the subject line. So those are really your two opportunities to stand out. So the strategy I have for both of those is, with the name, you need to do some networking. If you have a particular industry that you're in and you are trying to get into that particular industry publication, you need to start networking with that journalist. And what that means, it doesn't have to always be in person. That's responding to some of their social media by commenting genuine comments. That's reaching out to them when they've written another piece and saying, I really appreciate that perspective and that piece that you wrote on this topic. Building up that rapport without ever actually having to meet them in person. The second thing, the subject line, thinking through what that headline would look like when they are to write it in the newspaper or magazine. If it is appearing on the TV station, like what is that that lower third graphic that's going to appear on the screen when this story is playing? What are those things that's going to grab their attention, and they already know your thinking and their mentality? Because they get pitches all the time that are those people that are, hey, I'm here, I'm so great, this is what I do. And they're thinking, okay, why should I care? What's the story here? They're thinking through all these questions. So if your subject line is already thinking in terms of headline, attention grabbing for the viewer, they're already going, okay, this person gets it. They're going to be easy to work with. They're going to have all their T's crossed and I's dotted, and I want to work with them.
I'm sure.
Go ahead, Liz.
No, because Lisa, when you think about the people that pitch us, right?
I was just going to say that. That's exactly what I was just going to say. I mean, I think about that for the podcast when people kind of pitch us for podcasts, and I'm just going to say it. People who get the best response from me is where it's all laid out. It's kind of clear, and I understand exactly what they want to talk about, and I can make a quick decision in a moment. There are different avenues that we use to get guests, and the ones that really make me the most crazy are the ones that come on and say to me, well, I can talk about anything. And it's sort of like, no, you can't.
No, you can't.
And also, you have to fish through and go, okay, well, I don't know this, that. And then it takes forever to hone into something. I remember those interviews we would do at the beginning, and you'd just be like cringing, sitting there. You'd be like, no, Liz, we're not gonna, because they said they could talk about anything, and I'm like, cannot happen. That cannot be true.
Well, I mean, it's the old adage that if you try to serve everybody, you'll serve nobody, right? And that's just one of those marketing tips and techniques. And I'm just sort of like, well, I hate to kind of go into that judgmental space, but honestly, that's what we're doing anyway. We're judging, and everything you said about your 7 tips, I was like, yep, because that is exactly, if I think about it from perspective of the podcast, that is exactly what works on me. Right.
And think about it from the perspective that you have a purpose to serve.
Yes.
You know, that's truly, you know, I think I love that you've got that heart that you're like, oh, I don't want to tell them no, like, I don't want to be judgmental when they're sending me this bad pitch. But at the end of the day, you have a job to do. And if they can help you get to that goal and get you to that end of the day, checking off that job, then that's who you want to work with, rather than the people that you have to fish out those stories and help them along and get them up to speed and get them going. Like, you want a professional, and you want to be able to do your job in as little time as possible and get the most bang for your buck.
100%. The other thing I wanted to go back to that you said was your point 6 and 7, where you talked about having a little bit of a contrary opinion. And I was like, that is why social media probably is the shit show that it is today. Because everybody, I think that people try so hard to have the contrary opinion about things sometimes that it seems ridiculous, right. But it also works because it gets us going, no, that's crazy. And it gets them the attention. Right. But I was thinking, well, but when it's coupled with your very first point, which was be authentic, then it's totally fine. It really works, because if that is your true thought and that is your true opinion, then the contrariness really is helpful and effective, to be honest.
The media loves to play into that, because think about any morning radio show you've ever listened to. They always are stirring the pot, you will say. Like, they don't ever give their opinion. They don't ever say, like, well, this is what I mean, there's definitely some people out there that do, but for the most part, they just kind of say, what do you all think about this? Curious to hear your thoughts. And, you know, they get the phone ringing off the hook of people calling in to give them their thoughts. And so really, anytime that they can air a story where it is more of a controversial opinion, it gets the other people going. And now in the day of, they're looking for social media engagement, just like the rest of us are. And so when they can show that story on their social media, gets even more engagement. So it definitely is a tactic that works. And you're exactly right. And that's why I said it very first. If you can be authentic and true in that feeling, then it's perfect and you should run with it.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Right.
So how then do we kind of figure out what that story is, right? Because, okay, so let's personalize it a little bit. I'm an HR consultant. Liz is a business IFS coach. We want to get known, but what story do we pitch? I mean, I get all the elements, right? Finding the right journalists and networking with them. What are they talking about, commenting on, right? I like the idea of commenting on timely stories. I think that's one of the things that I think when I see people go viral, it's usually because they're commenting on something timely. But it's just sort of like, well, how do I come up with the story that I want to tell? Like, what is it? How do I figure that piece out?
So I like to reverse engineer it and really look for where your customers are that you're trying to reach, because obviously you don't want to just tell a story to tell a story and there not really be an end goal there, because then you would go, okay, great, I did that. Okay, now what? So where are your customers that you're trying to reach? What are the outlets that they are getting their news from? So where are those people spending time in media? And when you can start to think about those niche publications and outlets, that really then helps you determine that story again for the outlet, because remember, it's not about us. So it's not about us saying, oh, this is the story that I have to tell, let me just tell it to whoever will listen. It's what does the outlet care about, and what are their viewers, who are actually my prospective clients and customers, and what are they caring about, or what are their pain points? So when you think about it for that perspective, it can actually really narrow down a lot of what those topics are. But also thinking about what those headline worthy stories are in your arsenal that you can pull out whenever you are thinking about it from that perspective. So of course, I have a background in public relations. So just to your point, that's what I'm going to talk about. But I'm not going to talk about that whenever I go on my local TV station, because not everybody that's watching that local TV station cares about PR or even really needs those skills. So finding what it is that lights you up that you can talk about, but then tailoring it specifically to who you're talking to.
Right, exactly. And I like that, because I think that it's a common theme whenever we have people in the marketing space on. That's like a message, that drumbeat that kind of keeps coming back, which is setting yourself in your customer's shoes, setting yourself in the other person's shoes, like getting outside of yourself and thinking about what they need, what they want, and what problem you're solving for them. So I wanted to say that in that specific way, just to kind of like get it out there again, because here you are telling us that very same thing again. It's like, get out of your head and your space and get into their head and their space and solve the problem for them, not for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And I mentioned earlier that there is a free tool out there, and I do want to mention it. It's called HARO, and some of you all may have heard of it before. It stands for Help a Reporter Out, so it's HARO. It's a free website. You just put your email address in, and they send you 3 emails a day, and it is filled with opportunities from journalists that are looking for sources. So what we're mentioning is being proactive and reaching out to those journalists that you want to be in their publications. But I will say, I have been able to get many great features from HARO that you can almost look at it from the same perspective. So if you want to get in Martha Stewart magazine, you could reach out to all of the journalists that work with Martha Stewart and give different angles and get different perspectives. But you could also look for HARO opportunities that Martha Stewart is looking for a source in X industry, and you can respond back to that and have the chance to appear in it. I actually got my husband in, he owns a heating and air conditioning business. So even those of you who are thinking like, Mom, my industry is so boring, or no one's going to care to talk to me, I can prove to you that even looking for HARO opportunities, you can get some really big name, top tier outlets that will feature you.
Oh, that's fascinating. I have heard of HARO before. I don't think I've ever done anything with it, but I mean, that's such a great place to start if you truly want to be mentioned, right, in media, and that just kind of cuts out a lot of that work if you want to do that. Sure. Because we hear all the time that you've got to find out, and it's like, how do I find out which journalist is writing for which publication, and how do we, but their names are all there. If you go,
the names are all there. When I used to, I've talked about my company Bar Candy, which I'm doing more coaching now, but I used to go to all those magazines, right? Martha Stewart, even Oprah magazine. You just open it up, you look at the names, can send an email or whatever. I used to just send free gifts of my product to the different, or I would take it in. Even living here in New York is pretty easy to do. But yeah, just it sounds like just kind of also using your imagination a bit once you know kind of your audience and what publications or what journalists can really help your business out.
And if Oprah magazine is your ultimate goal, then it's reading the articles that are appearing in Oprah magazine. And you get in that mindset of, this is how they like to frame stories. It's not going to be the same way that Cosmopolitan frames stories. Right. So if you're sending the same pitch to all of those different outlets, it's not going to resonate. Just exactly to your point of somebody coming on the show and saying, I can talk about anything. Well, that's kind of how they feel when they get your pitch, where it's like, well, this isn't exactly how we would cover a story, so I don't think it's a fit. They just immediately write it off. They don't have enough time to get that creativity going that you need to do. So start inundating yourself in those outlets, in those publications, so that you know what they're looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
and I might have asked this already, but I think I'm going to ask it again because it popped in my head again, and I was just like, why am I doing this? Why do I care? Why am I doing it? Because yeah, but why?
Visibility is the fastest and quickest way to grow your credibility and authority in your industry.
Mhm.
You think about it from this perspective. If I tell you I'm so great, and I say I am so great, trust me, I'm great. People are like, okay, we got it.
Got you. I hear you. Great.
If I post it on social media and I say it on there, they're like, all right. And maybe a few people comment. They're like, yeah, you're so great. Okay, you might start to believe me. If Forbes magazine does a feature on me and says, Allie Martin is great, you will love her. We love her. You start to believe it.
Then you listen.
They listen. When a credible source is able to feature you as a credible and trusted source, you immediately get the authority and credibility that you want, you need, and you deserve.
Can I just tell you what popped into my head?
Yeah, you can put that on your website then, right?
Like, yeah.
Liz, you brought up a great point, because I always refer to publicity features that you get as a trophy that can go on your shelf that never goes away. Because I was featured in Forbes just a couple of months ago, and I will for the rest of my life be able to say I was featured in Forbes. No one can ever take that away. And that is a trophy that I get to hang on to.
That's right.
So it really is something that can last a lifetime. It's not just a marketing tool that, some people can think about social media ads as I'm pouring all this money into it. I'm seeing a short-term result and it's not a long-term. I truly believe publicity is the longest term investment you can make in your business, because even if I start a business 10 years from now, I can still say I was featured in Forbes. Yes, it was 10 years ago, but I was featured in Forbes.
Exactly.
And I kind of want to ask why it's so effective, right? Like, because you're right, you could say for 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I was featured in Forbes. I'm curious why it was so effective. And before you answer that, part of why I was thinking about, I was talking a little bit about how to get that visibility and the credibility, is I'm like, oh yeah, like all those scammers, right? Like Elizabeth Holmes and all those people, particularly Elizabeth Holmes.
And Adelphi.
Just like sitting on the cover of Fortune magazine, Time magazine, and how it became so hard for people to believe that the business was,
there could possibly be a false narrative there. Yes.
Right. Yes. Like, so that's what I was thinking. Well, why does it work so much? Why is it so effective?
So there is a psychological effect called the parasocial relationship. Now, this it typically works well whenever you're able to see somebody visually. So think about the anchors that are on your local TV station. You have watched them for years and years and years. You see their name, you see their face. And if you ever were to see them out in person, you might even have to catch yourself from saying hi, because you have to go, oh, they don't know who I am. I know who they are, but they don't know who I am. And the same thing is true when you are featured in the media. When people are able to see your name over and over and over again, they build up this relationship that they actually never even formed with you in real life, but they think they know you, they trust you. The marketing principles are know, liking, and trusting. And trusting is that hardest one. That's that last thing that happens. But that trust is built immediately without you ever actually having to meet them in person. So then when they actually see you in person or meet you, they just immediately feel like they have this connection with you, which it's pretty wild that can happen, if you ask me.
No, and it's so much about that. The perception, right? Paul and I, my husband, we talk about these shows all the time, and we're like so fascinated, right? And it's really about, okay, if someone else thinks that person is great, then they must be. If somebody else thinks it,
you don't question it.
You don't, you don't question it. And it's the social proof.
Yeah, it's
right?
Particularly if it's somebody that like and trust, probably, right? That and you've endorsed, and that's why testimonials as well.
But not even necessarily. If you go by a place like here in New York, a restaurant or a nightclub or something, there's all these people standing outside. You're like, what's that? I want to go in there too. When there's another place down the street that's the exact same, if not better. It's like, okay, they all like it, so now I want to too. I want to see what that's all about.
Yep.
I think it's true for anything.
Yep.
The
Yeah,
perception.
so all we're doing and I'm laughing because I'm like, oh, I think the way I'm about to say this might be a little weird, but all we're doing is tapping into what already exists in the world and maybe taking advantage of it a little bit, right?
There's no need to create new traffic. There's already traffic there of people going to these media sources. So we just need to be part of that conversation, be a part of that narrative that's happening. We don't need to direct them to us and say, come hear me, come hear me. Because again, if I'm talking about how great I am, maybe 1 out of 10 people will believe me, but not everyone will. But if the New York Times is reporting about how great I am, then you're going to believe me. And that's where people are already have it's where they're already reading their news. They're already absorbing themselves in that content. So I have to direct them anywhere else. They're already there.
Yes.
Right. 100%. Yeah, no, that's fairly excellent. So it's about really sitting down and thinking about what your goals are and being strategic about it. And I can't forget the kind of authenticity and having integrity about what we're doing and how we're doing it, because I think that that's critical. And sometimes that gets lost in a lot of what we do. We end up doing the fake thing. So I wanted to kind of hit that point again about really taking advantage of what already exists in the way people are thinking and what's happening in the world, the social dynamic, but doing so with doing so with integrity.
Whenever you're thinking about maybe 5 steps that you can take this week, I would encourage you to, number 1, gain clarity. So what we've talked about as far as where your dream customers are getting their news, where they are spending their time, gain that clarity. Then the second thing would be to really identify what those dream outlets are that you need to be featured in, and start to do your research. Who's writing for them? Get a subscription and start. I mean, subscriptions aren't gone completely yet. So get a subscription, start reading it, start absorbing yourself in it. Finding out how they are framing their headlines. And this does not take a publicist to have to do this. You are just, if you are absorbing yourself in it and you're reading it, you will automatically start thinking in that frame of mind. Start building relationships. As I said, start following them on Twitter, start following them on Instagram, and comment whenever they're cooking their dinner at night, like, oh, that looks great. Anytime they can see your name pop up in their inbox, it's going to build that parasocial relationship even before the real media action takes place. And then number 5 would be to sign up for HARO so that you can start to see those opportunities and hit it from both angles. Be reactive whenever they need sources and you can help out, but then also you can start doing your pitching beyond that and being proactive with your story.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
I love that you ended. Yeah, I love that you ended with those tips. That like, here's 5 things you can do today.
Because sometimes people's head are spinning. They're like, I want to do this. I know I need to do this, but I don't even know where to start. So I just gave it to you.
We love the tips here. Excellent. Okay, so is there anything else that we should talk about before we let you go? Anything we missed?
I do have a program called Be Your Own Publicist.
Okay.
And that actually teaches you how to go through this process even more in depth. It's $27 and you can get it at beyourownpublicistnow.com.
Great. Excellent. And where else can people find you, Allie?
I am at iwantfamefortune.com.
I love it. I love it. Because it's true.
Yes.
It's true.
Yes.
Whether you want to admit it or not.
Exactly. Fantastic.
Well, great show, great episode. Thank you so much for being with us today,
You're
Allie.
so welcome. I'm so excited. This was perfect. And I love your all's energy and how you all can bounce off of each other. I'm typically only interviewing one other person, but it's kind of fun when there's 2 to bounce off of each other.
Yeah, it's
Thank
great.
you.
We like
We
doing
love
it too.
Yeah. So thanks again. And thank you for being our badass of the week.
You are welcome. And I will be happy to share this in my emails. I'm going to be sharing it on social media, and I share it on my website as well. So if there's anything else I can do to help you all or get the word out, please let me know. I'll be happy to do it.